Infinitives and beyond. I know it's recycling this picture, but this time it really applies. Only infinitives don't really have much to do with infinity. To review what we've done so far, just a reminder, verbals are verbs acting as a different part of speech. We're still working with verbals. Participles are verbals acting as adjectives. And remember, there are two kinds of participles, past and present. Past participles normally end in ed, but there are many irregular ones. And you can recognize them because they are the ones that go with the verb to have in a verb phrase, like have gone, have done, and so on. And present participles always end in ing. Gerunds are verbals ending in ing and acting as nouns. Okay, don't confuse present participles and gerunds. Present participles act as adjectives, gerunds act as nouns. Both participles and gerunds often form phrases, and technically this is a phrase unit. A participial phrase is an adjective phrase formed by a participle, any complements, and any modifiers. Similarly, a gerund phrase is a noun phrase formed by a gerund, any complements, and any modifiers. Also, just as a reminder, a nominative absolute is a noun phrase not related to the rest of the sentence and modified by a participle or a participial phrase. Now, the infinitive is a verbal in the present form of the verb. Okay, that's how you recognize it. It's always in the present form, and but it can act as a noun, adjective, or adverb. It's not limited to one part of speech. Most of the time, it is identified because it is preceded by the word to. The word to is considered part of the infinitive. Here's an example. To wish is not enough. If you think about it, to wish is the subject of the sentence, and it's acting as a noun. Answers the question, what? What is not enough? To wish is not enough. So there's a good example of an infinitive. And notice it's a present form of the verb preceded by the word to. Similarly in this sentence, in Gethsemane, Jesus asked the Father to change his plans. Okay, to change, another example of an infinitive. Here also acting as a noun, answering the question, what? Asked the Father, what? In both of these, the infinitives act as nouns. They answer the question, what? What is not enough? Jesus asked what? In the first, to wish is the subject. In the second, to change is the direct object. Jesus asked what? Asked to change his plans. Asked whom? Asked the Father. Okay, Father in this case is, well, we'll see what that is later. Jesus is the one to call on. Here, to call is also an infinitive, present tense of the verb, preceded by the word to, but in this case it modifies one. Modifies the pronoun one, so it's acting as an adjective. And answers the question, which or which one? So, acting as an adjective. Okay, Jesus rode a donkey into Jerusalem to fulfill prophecy. In this case, to fulfill is acting as an adverb. To fulfill modifies the verb rode. It answers the question why. Note, while individual adverbs would not answer this question, phrases or verbals may answer the question why. If you think about it, asking the question why involves a verb. You know, why did you do something? It involves some kind of action. But individual adverbs wouldn't answer that question by themselves. Now, sometimes we say it because the other words are implied. Sometimes we'll say, well, because, and just leave it at that. But normally, why involves at least a phrase. But we will see adverbial phrases can answer the question why. Actually, we saw that with prepositional phrases as well. Okay. One piece of warning, as you know, the word to is normally a preposition. You know, give that to me. We went to the store. However, a preposition, if you know the definition of preposition, is always followed by a noun or a pronoun. But if you see the word to followed by a verb, then you know it is part of the infinitive. Okay, so it's not a prepositional phrase. If it helps you, those of you who've taken foreign languages, most European languages, the infinitive is a single word. That's true in Spanish, French, Latin, and most other European languages. For example, in Spanish and French, many infinitives end in IR. But in English, the infinitive begins with to. So the infinitive is two words. Sometimes, however, the to is dropped. When an infinitive follows certain verbs, the word to is often dropped, and this is especially true of verbs of helping or compelling. Let me give you an example. Simon the Cyrene helped carry Jesus' cross. Now, we could say Simon the Cyrene helped to carry Jesus' cross, but most of the time we drop the to. Remember, the infinitive is always in the present tense of the verb, so carry here is considered infinitive, just that the to is dropped. Some people would say the to is understood. The Roman soldiers made him carry the cross. Again, we can say the Roman soldiers made him to carry the cross, although that's a little old-fashioned. It's more like King James English rather than contemporary English. But again, normally with verbs, a lot of times verbs of compelling, we drop the to. Carry is again the infinitive with or without the to. Notice then a couple of things here, that carry Jesus' cross then, carry is like the direct object of help. Helped what? Or in this case maybe helped whom? Helped what? Carry the cross. Okay? In each of these sentences, the infinitive is the direct object of the verb. It answers the question what? Simon the Cyrene helped what? Or perhaps whom? Roman soldiers made what? Made whom? Okay? But it answers a noun question in its direct object. Another tricky thing about infinitives, you may have noticed in that last sentence the word him following the verb and coming before the infinitive. The Roman soldiers made him carry the cross. If you think about this now, you might say to yourself, okay, him is in the position of an indirect object. Like, I gave him the gift. Okay, except here, him is not receiving the cross. Him, or receiving the carrying of the cross, him is doing the carrying of the cross. What does that mean? Since him is doing the carrying, it may look like an indirect object, but it's not. Him is actually carrying the cross. So what do we call that? Him is really the subject of the infinitive. That's right. Infinitives can have subjects. Yes, sir. And you can probably guess what's coming next. Since infinitives are verbals, like participles and gerunds, we have infinitive phrases. Infinitive phrases are phrases that contain an infinitive, any complements, any modifiers, and, with infinitives, any subjects of the infinitive. So here's a sentence we've already seen. In Gethsemane, Jesus asked the Father to change his plans. Okay. To change his plans is the infinitive phrase. To change, of course, is the infinitive, and plans would be the direct object of the infinitive, and his just modifies plans, and to change his plans is the infinitive phrase. You could make a case that the Father is the subject of the infinitive, although people, in this kind of case with the verb to ask, people usually call it the indirect objects, but I would accept either way. Anyway, we know that to change is the infinitive. In this case, the infinitive has a complement, the direct object plans. The word his, of course, modifies plans, so the whole infinitive phrase is to change his plans. Another sentence we saw was this one. Jesus is the one to call on. In this case, to call on is the infinitive phrase. To call is an adjective infinitive modifying one. And to call on is an adverb modifying the infinitive to call. I know on a lot of times is a preposition, but remember, if there's no noun or pronoun following it, then it's not a preposition, and it's an adverb. Okay, to call is the infinitive, to call on is the infinitive phrase, and the word on is an adverb modifying the infinitive. All right. Here's another sentence we saw already. Jesus rode a donkey into Jerusalem to fulfill prophecy. Again, we have that sentence, that phrase, to fulfill prophecy, is the infinitive phrase. And we can see the infinitive phrase is to fulfill prophecy. To fulfill is the infinitive, and prophecy is the direct object of the infinitive. And prophecy is direct object, it's a noun, and it answers the question, to fulfill what? Okay. Next one's a little trickier. Simon the Cyrene helped carry Jesus' cross. But remember what I told you about before. Okay, carry Jesus' cross in this sentence is the infinitive phrase. The word to has been dropped. People would say to is understood. So carry by itself is the infinitive, and then cross is the direct object of the infinitive, and Jesus is possessive modifying cross. Okay, so yeah, remember how we noted that certain verbs, to is dropped. But the infinitive phrase, carry Jesus' cross, is the complement of the infinitive, direct object of cross, plus the modifier, Jesus. Okay, so all those parts make the infinitive phrase. Sometimes an infinitive, in a series of infinitives, the to is dropped after the first one. So he liked to ring doorbells and run away. Okay, good boys and girls shouldn't do that, but it's a simple example. We could say he liked to ring doorbells and to run away, but usually we drop the second to in a series. Run is also clearly an infinitive. He liked what? He liked to ring and to run. But we often drop the to. We could say he liked to ring doorbells and to run away, but we don't. Another example, I exhort you to read, mark, and inwardly digest the Word of God. As with other examples, the to's that could go with mark and digest are said to be understood. You could say, I exhort you to read, to mark, and to inwardly digest, or inwardly to digest, either one, the Word of God. Okay. If an infinitive has a subject, the subject is also part of the infinitive phrase. So, the Roman soldiers made him carry the cross. Made what? Him carry the cross. Okay, carry is the infinitive. Remember, the to is dropped. We could say made him to carry the cross. We could say it that way, but we normally don't. Cross is the direct object of the infinitive. Thus simply modifies cross. And then him is the subject of the infinitive. Okay, so I think we can see how that works. The entire phrase is him carry the cross. Carry is the infinitive, cross is the direct object of the infinitive, that modifies the direct object, and him is the subject of the infinitive, as we said. It would be the same if we included the word to. The Roman soldiers made him to carry the cross. No difference in meaning, no difference in grammar, except that the to becomes part of the phrase as well. Here's another one. My parents wanted me to do my homework. Can you analyze this one? Let's analyze the whole sentence. Let's start with the easy stuff first. Parents is the subject, wanted is the verb, and my modifies parents. Now, My parents wanted what? Wanted ice cream? Wanted a sunny day? What did they want? They wanted me to do my homework. To do is an infinitive. Homework is the direct object of the infinitive, and my modifies homework. So, to do my homework is the infinitive phrase. What about me? In this case, me is the subject of the infinitive. Okay? I'm not receiving the homework, I'm doing the homework. So me is the subject of the infinitive. So the whole infinitive phrase is me to do my homework. In this case, the phrase is a noun phrase acting as a direct object of the main verb wanted. Okay. And that is probably the most common place you'll see infinitive. Now, infinitive, like gerunds, can be in virtually any part of the sentence. You don't normally see infinitives following prepositions. That's kind of an old-fashioned way of doing it. Old Susanna says, "My true love for to see," but that we don't usually do that anymore. Usually drop the preposition in a case like that. But, okay. One thing to note about the subject of the infinitive: the subject of the infinitive is a personal pronoun. It is in the objective case, not the nominative case. Okay. The subject of a sentence, is I, you, he, she, we, and they. But the subject of an infinitive is the objective case. So it would be me, you, him, her, us, and them. Okay, so you say they wanted me to do my homework. She wanted her to fix her mistake. He helped him carry the cross. He made them serve 2 hours of detention. Okay. This is just a side note, but I want to mention this. This is not anything you really have to take notes about. It's not anything you're going to be tested on, but I just mention this for information. You've seen that infinitives sometimes have subjects. Some authorities say gerunds can have subjects. Your book does not. For example, this sentence, John saw Jesus ruling in heaven. Some people see Jesus ruling in heaven as a gerund phrase with Jesus as the subject of the gerund. Others, however, see ruling in heaven as a participial phrase modifying Jesus. You can make a case for both, but it's usually simpler just to say, okay, Jesus is the direct object of saw. Jesus saw what or whom. John saw what or whom. He saw Jesus. And ruling in heaven, what was Jesus doing? Okay, so, say, participial phrase modifying Jesus. And that's usually a simpler way to do it. Probably the way I would recommend it. Okay, as I said, you don't have to be concerned about this, but if you do come across this, now you know what they mean. In fact, some of you might come across this in studies of foreign languages. So that's one reason why I mention it. Okay, so to review our lesson, an infinitive is a verbal in the form of the present tense of a verb acting as a noun, adjective, or adverb. The infinitive normally begins with the word to. Occasionally, after certain verbs, the to is dropped. Occasionally, after a series, the to is dropped as well. In a series. Infinitives may have subjects, especially if they are acting as the direct object. An infinitive phrase is made up of an infinitive, any complements, any modifiers, and any subjects of the infinitive. Okay? Because infinitives can have subjects. In fact, if you think about it, you could even have a compound subject. We could say, my parents wanted my sister and me to do our homework. Okay, in that case, it's a compound subject. An infinitive phrase can act as a noun, adjective, or adverb. Okay, infinitives are not limited to one part of speech. They are most commonly nouns, but they can be adjectives or adverbs as well. If the infinitive has a personal pronoun as a subject, the pronoun is in the objective case. And that is it. The folks at Christian Heritage School hope you've learned to recognize and analyze infinitives and infinitive phrases. Enjoy the work from the book. God bless you.